Alex, you're no longer with the company, effective immediately. That's how it started. No warning shot, no performance review. Just Brandon Walsh's smug face pixelated on my laptop screen during the Friday all-hands meeting. 25 years in this business, and this 29-year-old kid fires me like I'm some intern who spilled coffee on his MacBook. Name's Alexander Brennan, by the way. Most folks call me Alex. I'm 52, been writing code since before this kid learned to tie his shoes. Built the compliance engine that keeps Apex Financial Solutions from getting shut down by the feds. But apparently that doesn't matter when Daddy's venture capital firm owns 40% of the company. The Slack channel exploded. Shock emojis, confused messages, someone typing WTF, then quickly deleting it. I just sat there, watching my career get executed in real time, while Brandon kept talking about strategic realignment and fresh perspectives. You know what the kicker was? He said I wasn't adapting to modern development practices. This from a guy who once asked me why we couldn't just use blockchain for regulatory reporting. I spent 2 hours explaining why the OCC doesn't accept smart contracts as compliance documentation. He nodded like he understood, then asked if we could make it an NFT. I didn't rage quit, didn't flip out, just clicked leave meeting and closed the laptop. Emma was at her friend's house, wouldn't be back until Sunday. Good thing too, because I spent the next hour just staring at the wall, trying to figure out how I was going to tell my 17-year-old daughter that Daddy might not be able to afford Duke after all. See, here's what guys like Brandon don't understand about guys like me. We've got real responsibilities. I'm not some 25-year-old living in a studio apartment eating ramen. I've got a mortgage with 11 years left on it. Emma's looking at colleges that cost $60K a year. My dad's 76 and his Medicare doesn't cover the good assisted living place in Greenville. I can't just take a gap year to find myself or whatever these kids do. The severance package showed up Monday. 2 weeks pay and a non-compete agreement that looked like it was written by someone who really didn't want me working anywhere in fintech for the next 18 months. No contracting, no consulting, no contributing to any financial technology product in any capacity. They really thought they had me cornered. What they didn't know was that I'd been backing things up for months, not stealing code. I'm not stupid. But when you've built something from scratch, you remember how you did it. You remember the logic, the architecture, the problems you solved, and when you're dealing with banking compliance, you keep everything documented. Everything. I had copies of my design documents, the ones I wrote before I ever touched their code base. Email threads where I explained why certain approaches wouldn't work. Architecture diagrams I sketched on napkins during lunch meetings. All dated, all time-stamped, all mine. The unemployment claim got denied, of course, terminated for cause according to HR. Cause being what exactly? Building systems that actually work? Training junior developers instead of letting them break production? Asking too many questions about why we were rushing features that could get us fined by the Fed? That's when I called my lawyer. Well, actually, I called my golf buddy Pete, who recommended his lawyer, guy named Morrison, no relation to the other Morrison causing me problems. He took one look at the non-compete and started laughing. Alex, you know there's new legislation coming, right? Takes effect January 1st. Makes these things unenforceable for tech workers in North Carolina. I didn't know, but I should have. That's the thing about being in this business for 25 years. You learn to pay attention to the details everyone else misses. So there I was. 3 months to figure out my next move. 3 months to sit quiet, document everything, and plan. 3 months to let Brandon think he'd won. I started reaching out to old contacts, not for jobs. Couldn't do that with the non-compete hanging over my head. Just friendly catch-ups. How's the family? Remember that system we built back in '09? Funny how these compliance requirements keep getting more complex, right? Turns out, a lot of folks in Charlotte's banking community weren't too happy with Apex's recent service issues. Funny how problems start showing up when you fire the guy who built your risk management system. Timeouts during high-volume periods, reconciliation errors that required manual fixes. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to make compliance officers nervous. Patricia O'Brien reached out in November. Pat and I worked together for 6 years. She knew my systems better than anyone except me. Coffee turned into a longer conversation. Turned out she wasn't the only one updating her LinkedIn profile. Carlos is looking too, she said. And Michelle's already talking to headhunters. Brandon hired 3 bootcamp kids to replace you. Kids who've never heard of COBOL, let alone worked with mainframe integration. I just nodded, sipped my coffee, didn't say much. But I was thinking plenty. That's when I started making my list. By December, I had 3 lists going. First list, Every system at Apex I'd touched in 8 years. Second list, everyone in Charlotte banking who owed me a favor, or at least remembered my name. Third list, everything Brandon's team was screwing up in real time. That third list got pretty long, pretty fast. See, banking software isn't like building some social media app. You can't just move fast and break things when you're handling other people's money. The Fed takes a dim view of that approach. But Brandon, fresh out of Wharton with his MBA and zero operational experience, figured regulatory compliance was just another checkbox on his product roadmap. Carlos called me in mid-December. He was trying to debug a reconciliation failure that was causing transaction discrepancies. Nothing huge, couple thousand here and there, but enough to trigger audit flags, the kind of thing that makes bank examiners very, very interested in your operation. It's the matching algorithm, he said. Something's off with the tolerance settings. Remember that custom logic you built for handling settlement timing differences? I remembered. Took me 6 months to get it right, working with actual bank operations folks to understand how transactions flow between different systems with different processing schedules. Brandon's new team had apparently optimized it by removing what they thought was unnecessary complexity. Can't help you there, buddy, I told Carlos. Non-compete, remember? But I could listen. And I could remember that the State Banking Commission was conducting their annual examinations in January. Funny how timing works out sometimes. Michelle Thompson reached out right after New Year's. She'd been keeping her head down, doing her compliance officer thing. But she was nervous. Real nervous. Alex, they're not taking the regulatory stuff seriously. Brandon keeps pushing back our examination prep because he wants to focus on the new AI features. Says compliance is just overhead drag on innovation. That got my attention. Bank examinations aren't suggestions. When the state sends examiners to review your operations, you either pass or you're out of business. Period. And preparation isn't optional. It's survival. How bad is it? I asked. Bad. The documentation is incomplete. The audit trails have gaps. And nobody on the current team understands the risk scoring algorithms you built. They're just running your code without understanding what it does. Perfect. Running complex financial algorithms without understanding them is like performing surgery with a manual you can't read. Eventually, somebody bleeds. January 1st came and went. My non-compete officially became toilet paper, courtesy of the new state legislation. I celebrated by updating my LinkedIn profile. Just the basics. Open to new opportunities in financial technology. By January 3rd, I had 12 messages from recruiters and 4 direct calls from former colleagues. Word travels fast in Charlotte's banking community, especially when it involves someone who knows where all the compliance bodies are buried. But I wasn't looking for just any job. I had something specific in mind. First National Bank of the Carolinas had been watching Apex's struggles with interest. They were Apex's biggest competitor in the regional market, and they'd been looking for ways to modernize their technology stack without risking regulatory violations. Their CTO, Janet Reynolds, and I had worked together back in the early 2000s during the post-9/11 banking security overhaul. She called me directly. Alex, we've been hearing interesting things about Apex's technical challenges. Would you be interested in consulting on a compliance technology assessment? Consulting, not employment. Smart woman. No, non-compete issues. And it gave us both flexibility to see where things might lead. The assessment took 2 weeks. I reviewed their current systems, documented gaps, and provided recommendations for modernization. Standard stuff. But I also happened to mention that I had deep expertise in exactly the kind of real-time compliance monitoring that was becoming mandatory under new Fed guidelines. Guidelines that Apex was struggling to implement. Janet made an offer the day I finished the assessment. Chief Risk Officer position, $190K base, equity package, and a mandate to build a best-in-class risk management platform. Everything I'd been wanting to do at Apex, but with actual backing from leadership who understood that compliance isn't optional in banking. I accepted on a Friday. Started Monday. Tuesday morning, the State Banking Commission showed up at Apex for their scheduled examination. I didn't orchestrate that timing. Didn't need to. Bank examinations are scheduled months in advance, but I did know they were coming because I'd been through dozens of them over the years, and I knew exactly what they'd be looking for. They found problems, lots of problems, incomplete documentation, audit trail gaps, risk scoring algorithms that couldn't be explained or validated, transaction reconciliation failures that violated federal banking regulations, the kind of violations that result in cease and desist orders if they're not fixed immediately. Patricia called me Wednesday evening. Brandon's freaking out. The examiners are asking questions nobody can answer. They want to know who designed the risk management system and why certain controls were removed without proper authorization. I just listened. Sometimes that's all you need to do. They're talking about bringing in an external consultant to assess the system architecture, someone with deep compliance experience. Funny how these things work out. By Friday, Apex had received a formal regulatory notice, 90 days to remediate significant compliance deficiencies or face potential license restrictions. Their stock price dropped 30% on the news. My phone started ringing. The call came from an unknown number on a Saturday morning. I almost didn't answer. Alex, it's Brandon. First time he'd called me by my actual name instead of buddy or chief. Desperation has a way of improving people's manners. We need to talk, he said. Can you come in Monday? I've got a job, Brandon. First National. Maybe you heard. Silence on the other end. Then, we'll pay you as a consultant. Whatever your rate is. My rate. The guy who fired me for being outdated was now begging me to fix the mess his modern development practices had created. There's something beautifully ironic about that. But I didn't say yes right away. Let him sweat over the weekend. Monday morning, I walked into Apex wearing a First National polo shirt. Subtle, but effective. The place felt different, quieter, more tense. Half the development team looked like they hadn't slept in days. Brandon met me in the conference room. No swagger this time, no startup founder confidence. Just a scared kid who'd realized that daddy's money can't fix regulatory violations. The examiners want a complete system audit, he said. Full documentation of all risk management processes. They're threatening to restrict our banking license. I nodded. Pulled out a notebook, started writing. Playing the part of dutiful consultant taking notes. What's your timeline, I asked. 60 days. They gave us 60 days to prove we can maintain adequate controls. 60 days to rebuild systems that took me 8 years to perfect. Systems his team had optimized into non-compliance. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I'll need complete access, I said. Code repositories, documentation, audit logs, everything. He agreed immediately. Signed whatever paperwork I put in front of him. Amazing how regulatory pressure focuses the mind. I spent the next week documenting just how badly they'd broken things. Not to fix them. That wasn't my job anymore. Just to document, for the record. The reconciliation algorithm had been simplified to the point where it couldn't handle edge cases. Transaction timing differences that happened maybe once a month, but when they did happen, they created audit trail gaps that violated federal banking regulations. The risk scoring system had been modernized by removing what Brandon's team thought was unnecessary complexity. Turned out that complexity was there for a reason, to handle the dozens of special cases that real-world banking operations encounter every day. The compliance reporting had been automated, which sounds good until you realize the automation was generating reports that looked correct but contained subtle errors that would fail any serious regulatory review. 3 weeks into the consulting engagement, I delivered my assessment to Brandon and the board. 47 pages of detailed technical analysis with a simple conclusion. The system needed to be completely rebuilt from scratch. Estimated timeline, 18 months. Estimated cost, $15 million. The room went dead silent. What if we brought you back full time? Brandon asked. Give you whatever you need, whatever team you want? I looked at him for a long moment. Then I smiled. Brandon, I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy where I am. 2 weeks later, Apex announced they were seeking a buyer. The regulatory issues combined with the massive technical debt made them unmarketable as an independent company. Their enterprise clients had started looking for alternatives, clients like the ones I was now serving at First National. Janet Reynolds called me into her office that Friday. Interesting opportunity just came up, she said. Apex's client portfolio is available for acquisition. $200 million in managed assets, plus their compliance documentation. Might be worth taking a look. I nodded. I'd be happy to evaluate the technical assets, make sure they're compatible with our systems. They weren't, of course. Apex's code was too tangled, too dependent on workarounds and patches to be worth acquiring. But their client relationships, their compliance documentation, their regulatory approvals, those had real value. We acquired the client portfolio for $12 million, about 1/10 what Apex had been worth 6 months earlier. Brandon took a job at his father's investment firm. Something in business development, I heard, probably for the best. Turns out running a regulated financial services company requires more than an MBA and good presentation skills. Emma got her acceptance letter from Duke in April. Full scholarship for engineering students with family income below certain thresholds. Turns out my temporary unemployment the previous year had worked in our favor for financial aid calculations. Funny how these things work out. I'm still at First National, Chief Risk Officer, building the kind of compliance technology I always wanted to build. No rush timelines, no corners cut for demo purposes, just solid engineering for a leadership team that understands banking isn't a game. Sometimes people ask me if I planned it all out, if I knew how everything would unfold. Truth is, I just knew enough to be patient. In banking, like in life, if you wait long enough, people's mistakes catch up with them. You don't have to get revenge on guys like Brandon. You just have to let them be themselves. The market handles the rest. By June, the Charlotte banking community was treating the Apex situation like a case study in how not to manage regulatory compliance. I heard the stories at industry meetups, golf games, the monthly Federal Reserve Advisory Committee meetings that Janet had gotten me invited to join. Brandon had burned through 4 consulting firms trying to rebuild systems his team had broken. Each consultant came in, spent 3 weeks analyzing the mess, then delivered essentially the same recommendation. Start over from scratch. Estimated timeline, 18 months. Estimated cost, $15 million. The board wasn't interested in 18-month timelines. Their Series C investors were asking pointed questions about regulatory risk. 2 major enterprise clients had already terminated their contracts, citing concerns about platform stability. The rest were in various stages of evaluating alternatives. Alternatives like the modernized compliance platform I was building at First National. Michelle called me in early July, her voice strained with exhaustion. "Alex, I need to ask you something, hypothetically. If someone wanted to document technical debt and compliance gaps for a potential whistleblower complaint to the Fed, what would that look like?" I paused, choosing my words carefully. Michelle was a good compliance officer who'd been put in an impossible position by management that didn't understand banking regulations. Hypothetically, the OCC has specific procedures for reporting unsafe banking practices. They're particularly interested in institutions that can't adequately explain their risk management systems to examiners. And if someone had documentation showing that management ignored compliance recommendations, that would be exactly the kind of thing they'd want to see. Michelle filed her complaint 2 weeks later. Not out of spite, but because compliance officers have a professional obligation to report systemic risks they can't fix internally. The OCC takes these complaints seriously, especially when they come from credentialed professionals with detailed documentation. August brought more bad news for Apex. The OCC launched a formal investigation based on Michelle's complaint, combined with the State Banking Commission's earlier findings. Federal bank examiners are more thorough than state regulators, and they have bigger hammers. Patricia finally jumped ship in September, accepting a senior QA position at First National. She brought with her institutional knowledge of Apex's client base, their pain points, their contract renewal schedules, all perfectly legal information sharing between professionals in the same industry. Their biggest client, Carolina Community Bank, is up for contract renewal in December, Patricia mentioned during one of our team meetings. They've been asking a lot of questions about disaster recovery capabilities and regulatory compliance support. Carolina Community Bank, $50 million in assets, 15 branches across the Piedmont region, the kind of client that values stability over innovation, compliance over disruption, the kind of client that was probably nervous about their current technology vendors' regulatory problems. Janet asked me to join the sales call when Carolina Community Bank requested a demonstration of our compliance platform. Their CTO was a guy named Williams who'd been in community banking for 20 years. He asked smart questions about audit trails, exception handling, regulatory reporting accuracy. "We need a vendor we can trust," Williams said during the technical review. "Someone who understands that banking software isn't like building social media apps. When something breaks, real people lose real money." I walked him through our platform's architecture, explaining how we handled edge cases, maintained audit integrity, and ensured regulatory compliance. The questions he asked told me everything I needed to know about what was going wrong at Apex. We signed the contract in November. Carolina Community Bank became First National's largest technology client, bringing with them 15 other community banks who'd been watching their vendor evaluation process. The final blow to Apex came in December. The OCC issued a formal enforcement action citing inadequate risk management controls and unsafe banking practices. The order required immediate remediation of all compliance deficiencies under federal supervision, plus a $5 million civil penalty. Brandon tried one last desperate move. He called me directly. "Alex, we need to talk. I know things ended badly between us, but we're willing to make this right. Name your price to come back and fix the compliance issues." I let him finish his pitch. Stock options, signing bonus, complete authority over the technology organization. Everything he should have offered 8 months earlier, before his modernization efforts destroyed systems that took years to build. "Brandon, I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy where I am. We'll double whatever First National is paying you. It's not about the money. It's about working with people who understand the business." He hung up without saying goodbye. Apex filed for Chapter 11, bankruptcy protection in January, exactly 1 year after the state banking examination that started their downfall. The company was restructured and sold to a larger fintech firm that specialized in acquiring distressed financial technology companies. Brandon kept his title but reported to new management that had actual banking experience. I ran into him at a Charlotte Bankers Association meeting last month. He looked older, tired, like someone who'd learned expensive lessons about the difference between disruption and destruction. We nodded politely but didn't speak. Emma finished her sophomore year at NC State with a 3.8 GPA in computer engineering. She's doing an internship this summer at a Charlotte tech company building mobile apps for healthcare. Different industry than banking, but she inherited my attention to detail and systematic thinking. She'll do fine. My dad moved into the assisted living facility in Greenville last fall. Nice place, good staff, the kind of care Mom would have wanted for him. The insurance covers most of it, and my CRO salary at First National handles the rest without stress. Sometimes people ask me if I planned it all out, if I knew how everything would unfold. Truth is, I just knew enough to be patient and document everything. In banking, like in life, if you wait long enough and pay attention to details, other people's mistakes catch up with them. You don't have to get revenge on guys like Brandon. You just have to let them be themselves while you build something better. The market handles the rest.